I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine, one of our favorite speakers. Phil's spoken here a few years ago, and I think that you're going to find out why he is one of my favorite speakers. And he's going to talk about 8 principles that will transform your influence in today's culture. And I would tell you right now, as he's coming on up, grab a pen and a piece of paper because you're going to write these things down.
Okay, get to a place where you can see the screen. Kathleen told you a little bit about what we do, so I don't have to go into that too much. We have a little production company up in Burbank. We've produced a number of things. Primarily, we work with churches and ministries, helping them use the media more effectively. We live in a media-driven culture. Research indicates all of us see an average of about 5,000 media messages every single day. And if we don't learn to communicate in that language, we're not going to make much of an impact in the culture. Half jokingly, we tell people we help Christians not suck at the media. And if you've ever seen much Christian television, you know I'll be busy for the rest of my life. There's a lot of work to be done. But we've been very honored. We did the Hillsong movie, Let Hope Rise, that aired in theaters literally around the world. We did an interesting Fathom event last fall. I don't know if you know Fathom events. They're one-night kind of extravaganzas in movie theaters all over the country. We did it on the book The Insanity of God by Nick Ripken, who's a missionary in Somalia. He lost his 18-year-old son there, pulled back from the mission field, and decided to look at the hardest places on the earth to be a Christian. Go there and find out if God actually shows up when things get tough. We sent a camera with him. We did a 90-minute documentary. Who would have thought a documentary about Christian persecution would have sold out theaters all over the country? It was really quite remarkable when people came out. One of the problems Kathleen and I have is that we do speak all over the world. We were in Lima, Peru at a big conference a few weeks ago, and the perception of people overseas is so strange about Hollywood. We tell them we live and work in Hollywood, so they assume that this is what we do for a living. It's really kind of weird. But one of my passions is that perception is interesting to me, and I want to talk about influence tonight because as Christians, one of the reasons we don't have more influence is we just don't tell our story very well. I was at a church the other day, and I think the church sign was trying to describe the pastor's sermon series on hell, but this is the way that came out. You know what hell is like? I'm here preaching. I don't think that's what they were trying to communicate. And I found a church the other day that was promoting their Vacation Bible School program, but they weren't thinking about where they put the sign because it came out like this. Bad choice. And I actually went to a Christian bookstore not long ago, and I found, well, I'll just show it to you. Holy Bible, signed copy. Wow! Man, that would have been worth some money. I should have picked it up. I don't know what I was thinking. But my favorite one of all time is, and I hope I don't offend any Methodists in the audience, I don't think the Methodists were thinking clearly when they decided to abbreviate their name for the street sign that led to their Bible camp, because it became a meth Bible camp. Just telling you. Whatever you do, if you don't listen to anything else I say, do not send your kids to a meth Bible camp. Dead end, they got that right, that's for sure. That's for sure. So one of the things I'm passionate about is how we tell our story. How we tell our story. And it's interesting to me that Hollywood, I think you'd all agree that Hollywood is the most influential city on the planet. We actually have a saying in Hollywood that Hollywood is great at making fake things look real, but Christians are great at making real things look fake. Mm-hmm. We just don't tell our story well when it comes to the culture. And so I started thinking about that. Why is Hollywood increasing influence, and why are we as Christians being marginalized? Why are we losing influence in the culture? So I thought I'd ask around. I'm a producer, so I'm the practical guy. So I went to studio heads, I went to producers, I went to some celebrities, writers, directors, to find out how they live their life. What are they doing that we're not? Behavioral stuff, simple stuff. And I found 8 things that influencers do that we generally don't. That's why I thought you should write it down, because I think you could go back and teach this to your team, because ultimately what we're doing tonight is about influence. These ministries are trying to influence the people they serve. You're trying to influence these ministries and help them go to the next level. Collectively, as a Christian community, we should be influencing the culture in a more powerful and significant way, but we're not. And I found these 8 behaviors really quite interesting. So I just want to share quickly, and then we'll close tonight. We don't have much time. But I want to give you 8 quick thoughts about what influencers do that other people don't do. Number 1, I discovered influencers have a big vision. Influencers have a really big vision. You know, so many Christians think, well, if I could just do it halfway, if I could just get partly there, that would be great. But trust me, nobody supports a small vision. Nobody gets excited about small vision. Big vision influences people. You may recall, if any of you saw the movie about Noah that starred Russell Crowe a couple of years ago. That's the art from the movie. And if you saw it, it's not the real Noah story. It's certainly not the biblical story. Paramount missed the mark when it came to telling the real Noah story, but let me tell you this. Paramount believes so much in that story, even though they got it wrong. They believed so much in it that they were willing to spend $250 million to make that movie and market it to the world. I have yet to meet a Christian organization that believes in the Noah story that much. They'd be willing to put up that kind of money to tell that story to the world. We've got to have a bigger vision. We've simply got to have a bigger vision. The Bible's filled with people with big vision. Think of Nehemiah, he was the wine steward. He was the cupbearer to the king, and he had a vision for rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. Biblical characters have enormous vision. The second thing I discovered is influencers are ruthless about their time. It's interesting because we want to be servants as Christians. We want to help people. We want to serve other people. We kind of get lax about our time. This movie, or this scene, is from a movie called In Time. It starred Justin Timberlake. Came out a few years ago, and it's about a culture in the future that is so overpopulated that when you're born, you have a laser tattoo on your forearm of exactly how much time you have left to live. And it's a countdown clock. Trust me, that culture, those people are ruthless about their time. They don't waste a single second. In Hollywood, man, they don't waste a second at all. They're incredibly ruthless about their time. I saw a quote by Warren Buffett the other day that said, the difference between successful people and really successful people say no most of the time. I'll tell you, if we want to be servants, we want to help people, and that's a great thing, but I really believe that if you feel God's called you to accomplish something significant in your life, it's time to start saying no to some other things. We really need to start thinking about how we can use our time more effectively. The third thing I discovered is influencers understand that creativity is about inspiration. It's not about routine. Hollywood professionals, writers, producers, directors, they don't wait around on the sofa eating Cheetos waiting for that big idea to hit. They know that they have to show up every single day and do the work. I have a quote. I love this quote about writing, that the art of writing is the art of connecting the seat of your pants to the seat of the chair. It's interesting. There was a book that came out a few years ago called Daily Rituals. It outlines 300 of the most influential and creative people of the last 100 years. You know what the book discovered? All it did was track their daily schedule. You know what they discovered? They discovered that the most creative people of the last 100 years are slaves to routine. They show up every day and do the job. They show up every day and write, sculpt, paint, work. The most productive and creative people don't wait for inspiration to happen. And they also have some peculiar eccentricities. I saw that you'll love this. There's a great screenwriter, Dalton Trumbo, who was famous for writing in his bathtub. He actually had a desk built to fit in his bathtub. You may know Winston Churchill wrote some of his most famous speeches in his bathtub. Agatha Christie, the mystery writer, did the same thing, but in order to be kind, I didn't show any pictures of her in the bathtub. But she did the same thing. They wrote in the bathtub. Wherever you find you do your best work, build a fence around that. Guard it. What time of day you do it. Where you do it. Focus on that. Be ruthless about your time and understand that creativity is about routine. I have a friend, Todd Komarnicki, he lives in New York City. He produced the Christmas movie Elf a few years ago. Remember the movie Elf with Will Ferrell? Most recently, he wrote the script for the movie Sully for Clint Eastwood. Remember Sully Sullenberger, who landed the plane in the Hudson River in New York City? He just wrote the script for that movie that came out just last year. Todd has an interesting routine. He lives in an apartment in New York City with 2 little kids and his wife. So he can't get anything creative done there. So he has a regular routine he does every day. He gets up in the morning, gets his computer, goes to a coffee shop. Works for 2 or 3 hours. Lunchtime comes, he moves to a lunch place. He goes there, starts working for 2 or 3 hours. The afternoon, moves to another coffee shop. Finishes his day writing there. They expect him every day. They have a table set aside for him. He shows up without fail at the same time every single day. And he's one of the most sought after people in Hollywood. He's just getting ready to write and produce a new series for NBC. Fourth thing I discovered is influencers actually become known for something. They become known for something. And let me just say that that's more than just being a teacher or a coach or an insurance salesman or an executive. It's about being extraordinary at something in your field. The people that break through and get noticed, I've discovered, are people who are extraordinary at something. I kind of call it being an authority. I don't use the word expert so much, but it's just interesting to me that when people remarked about Jesus, they didn't say, wow, he's authentic. We love Jesus because he's relevant. We love Jesus because he wears skinny jeans and a t-shirt. No, they didn't say any of that stuff. What did they say? They said he spoke as one having authority. Let me tell you, you want to influence people? Be extraordinary at something. Become known. Be an authority. It makes a dramatic difference. The fifth thing I've discovered is that influencers take responsibility. One of the biggest problems, I think, in our culture today is we live in this incredibly blame-oriented culture. It was my parents' fault. It's the environment's fault. It's the government's fault. It's my school's fault. My college didn't prepare me well. We want to blame everybody else. But I discovered in Hollywood, if your movie fails, guess what? It's a long time before you work again. We actually call it director jail. When a Hollywood director fails and his movie crashes and burns, guess what? You know, the chart that you see on the slide is the Q ratings. We have in Hollywood what we call a Q score. Q score is a mathematical formula of a celebrity's influence. Before I hire Matt Damon to be a star in my movie, I want to make sure a lot of people are going to buy tickets, that he has a lot of influence. It's actually a mathematical score of how much people like this guy. Well, every year, Nielsen Ratings releases Q scores, which is the 20 most influential celebrities in Hollywood. In 2016, they released the Q scores, and it sent a bombshell throughout the industry. You can barely see there, but if you notice, for the first time in history, the six most influential celebrities in Hollywood weren't movie stars, they weren't TV stars, they weren't recording artists, they were YouTube stars. Most of them, 10, 12, 14-year-old kids who are producing programs in their parents' basement or in a spare bedroom. Those are now the most influential people in Hollywood. Don't tell me you have to get a college degree, you have to be older, you have to have funding. These are people doing it on a shoestring, and they're having incredible influence in Hollywood. And on the other end, I could have a list. I wrote a book called One Big Thing, Discovering What You're Born to Do. And in that book, I talk about Samuel Morse. You think he invented the telegraph. You know what? He spent his entire career as a painter. He was a painter. It wasn't until he was almost 60 that he lost a huge commission for the government doing a mural in Washington, D.C. He was so frustrated that he lost that painting commission that he decided to just ditch it. He walked away from painting and started tinkering with this thing in his apartment that he called a telegraph. At the end of his career, when most other people would have retired and thought about giving up, Samuel Morse literally changed the world. It's not about age anymore. Influencers understand that. Mother Teresa was 87 when she died, and she was working right up to the last minute. Right up to the last minute. The eighth thing, the thing I end with is influencers know how to leverage their personal story. Let me tell you something. Who you are matters. Your past matters. Your family matters. Your history matters. There are people in this room that would tell me, you know what, nothing about my life is that exciting. Nobody cares to hear about my life, but I'm going to tell you, somebody out there needs to hear your story. And what's interesting to me is this room is filled with business leaders who sell products, lead teams, go into the office, never thinking about how I can integrate who I am into what I do. Let me tell you, you want to stand out in your field, you want to be unique, learn to leverage your personal story. Who you are matters. And I don't want to be cheesy and over-spiritual, but let me tell you, God cared about who you are enough that he was willing to let his son die to reach you, to win that story back, to win you back. Your story is far more important than you could ever believe. And yet most people never think how I could use my story to enhance how I sell a product or how I lead my team or how I run my company. Influencers know how to leverage their personal story. Look at the list. It's pretty incredible. Number one, influencers have a big vision. It's time to raise our sights. Number two, they're ruthless about their time. It's time to start saying no sometimes and start focusing. Number three, they've established a routine. Don't wait for inspiration. Show up. Do the work. Number four, they've developed a real skill. Besides being an executive, what are you absolutely the best in the world at? What are people going to come to you for? That's when you start having influence. Number five, they take responsibility. Stop blaming other people. Own it. Own it and move on. Number six, influencers know how to focus in a distracted world. Kathy mentioned the average adult checks their iPhone 110 times a day. The average middle schooler 85 times a day. In that distracted world, we need to learn how to focus. God is not in the distractions. God only shows up when you start to focus. Number 7, influencers know that age doesn't matter. It's never too late to be an influence on someone. Never too late. And finally, influencers know how to leverage their personal story. And I'm just going to say this. It's a matter of taking your time and seeing a bigger vision for your life. One of the things I discovered about interviewing people who are incredible influencers is they don't look at the future at random. They have a very focused picture of what they want their future to look like. Many of you know Walt Disney. I'm a huge fan of Walt, and I've had the opportunity of knowing a number of the leaders at Walt Disney Studios, and they told me an interesting story. One producer who was there in Walt's early days told me that Walt was obsessed with doing it bigger and better. Bigger and better. It's all he could think about. In fact, even before he finished Disneyland here in Orange County, he thought, you know what, guys, we could do this bigger and we could do it better. So as soon as Disneyland was finished, he got his architects and his designers and his engineers, and they moved east. They went to Orlando and they started working on Disney World. But most people don't realize Walt got cancer during the process. Walt died before Walt Disney World could open. Some of you may remember the opening celebration. They were cutting the ribbons, parades were going on, celebrities were there. And Walt's widow was there as well. She was sitting in the grandstands watching the opening ceremonies. And one of the young executives, trying to be encouraging, trying to, I don't know, be sympathetic, he leaned over to Walt's widow and said, you know, it's such a shame Walt can't be here to see this. And without missing a beat, she leaned back to him and said, oh no, you don't understand. Walt saw it. That's why it's here. Walt saw it. That's why it's here. How many of you see where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? How many of you see where these ministries could be in 5 years, in 10 years? Because I can tell you, influencers learn to have a real clear picture, not in a weird new agey way, but have a real understanding of where I want to be. It's not random. Influencers know how to see what that picture is like and know what to aim for. Thank you very much for letting me talk. I appreciate it.
Well, a few housekeeping things before we get out of here. If you're wearing the lanyard, there's 3 boxes in the back. If you would drop them over in those 3 boxes as you leave. Right next to those 3 boxes, to the left of those 3 boxes, are the baskets. There are black baskets in each one of those that there are for ministry. If you would tear out your feedback forms and put those in those boxes today. I'm sure that Brian's going to get a lot of opportunities to send out Walking on the Water, or not Cowboys and Surfers videos. So put those in the black trays back there. If you'd like to become a partner in the Barnabas Group, complete that application. If you would, give it to me. If you're a Barnabas Group partner already and you haven't gotten your Barnabas Group bear, Susie's going to be back there. She wants to give you the Barnabas Group bear. She wants to get a picture with that bear. If you lower your head and just kind of close your eyes, I want to think about the journey that we're on today. The first crop came and Mark asked us how we might have an impact on young people that could change their lives forever. Who in this room will come alongside crop and help them have that impact? Then Kathleen Cooke came up and she shared their journey that God has taken she and Phil on. And she shared about their new project, the Influence Lab, and how media could and should be an impact for Christ. Then Grace Ministries challenged us to love without limits. God, I once again would pray that we here tonight will be able to love as Rita does. How might we bless them? Then Leah came up and told us about how God is being pushed out of our country. And might someone here tonight be that person or know that person who would be their leader in California? And Brian had an idea for Surfers and Cowboys, but none of us had thought about that before. And that has reached so many with God's truth who would never have entered the church. Then Mark shared with us how God took his voice but used him to birth the Hands and Feet Project with a focus on family preservation and job creation. Then Phil closed the night and gave us 8 things to think about. How will we use these principles to transform our world? Lord, I would just pray that tonight that you would bless each person that's in this room, that there would be connections that would be made, connections with the ministries, connections with people around the tables, connections with people that they might have met tonight. Lord, that a year from now, that we might look back and say, wow, that got its start. That seed was planted on this night, and watch what happened to it in that year, that it would grow, that you would bear fruit for it, fruit for your kingdom. So, Father, we just thank you for that. We thank you for the ministries. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you for Phil and Kathleen. Thank you for each person who's given up several hours of their time to come and be with us tonight. Redeem that time. Give us a great night's sleep. And Lord, we just praise you and we love you. And we pray this in the precious name of your Son.